All right. Good morning. It's the last day of May, May 31st, 2024. And we're here on the Dev Talk Show live. We have my co-host, Rich Ross, which I was trying to point a little more correctly. Got it. And I'm Chris Gomez, and we're here. Yeah, I know. And I always have to think about it too, because is it
it makes it worse because they flipped my image. So I'm actually in here backwards. That's wild. Okay.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Look at that. And we also have our producer in the back there. Oh, he just moved out of frame. So, good morning, everybody.
Producers never want to be on air. That's how it goes.
Yeah, I don't know how he knows. He figured, oh, we're live now. Let me move.
Mm-hmm.
So, hope you're having a great Friday wherever you are in the world, and I mean that sincerely because we've had some comments from all around the world, which is super awesome. Like that, just I think that's the coolest thing. Not to mention, for folks that may not have noticed this, I noticed last night. I happened to notice that the channel, the Dev Talk Show channel on YouTube, was at 899 subscribers. I just happened to notice that at one point, and this morning it is at 902. So
wow,
thank you everybody for crossing that 900 threshold. The Twitch channel is showing 275 followers, and the Dev Talk Show Twitter account is only at 90, so it's bringing up the rear there. I have not looked at LinkedIn in a while, and the only reason is we do have a LinkedIn page, and LinkedIn will allow us to stream directly on that page when there are 150 followers. So for now, if you're watching on LinkedIn, it's because you're watching on my LinkedIn page.
Right.
Just so at least it's somewhere. Certainly I should be ready with these shows to have a link ready for LinkedIn, right? Or maybe include it in the YouTube notes, because since a lot of people are watching there. So
excellent.
Yeah.
So it's been a little bit since I've been here, but I'm in a new place or a new setup. So I've been working on getting a mic, getting a camera. So things are going to be a little weird. Like we've got the weird kind of, hey, my hand disappears kind of thing going on. But we'll get there over the course of the next couple of shows or so as we work out all the bugs. But
okay, yeah,
so far
no problem. I mean, hey, that is all good. And you know what? I've never accused this of being a show with multiple producers and stagehands.
That's it.
I mean, it is self-produced, right? So here we are, just making this happen. So
Exactly.
Let's see if I can find real quick. I don't know if you have it ready. There was something we were going to look at real quick in the blogs.
Yeah, I'm going to share my screen and go ahead and
do that. Awesome.
Get the right window here. It's very odd. I got, as part of this new setup, I got a 34-inch Samsung ultra wide HD, not curved, it's flat. But I toned it down to 1920 by 1080 and it looks so small now. So just some of the stuff I'm doing here. But up on the screen, let me bring this up here. So up on the screen is a blog post, and this is done by James Montemagno. And while over the course of the last week, build happened, and there's a lot of great announcements. I'm still playing catch up on a lot of them, as I'm sure you are as well, Chris. Yeah, and this kind of covers some of the, I think, the more interesting parts for folks if they're .NET developers. So this one here, this highly technical talk, it's actually a fun talk with that is, I guess, part of a series that Hanselman and Tobe have been doing around deep diving into .NET and digging into, well, what happens when you run a link query, right? What's going on under the covers, or what is span really doing when it runs, and just taking you through, from the code, if you were to write it out by hand versus what's going on under the covers with the actual .NET framework or .NET Core tooling, essentially. So if you are interested in those kind of things, I think those are really helpful to understand how the language really works, and having any kind of the misconceptions around, oh, well, don't use link because it ruins the performance. He actually shows the things where how it actually does for many of these things, how it does improve your performance of your application. So
Yeah, this is certainly a spinoff of a series that I think just started about a month ago, maybe a little bit longer. And I have been trying to watch them. Stephen Tobe has his name that I've kind of recognized from the blogs for a long time, being on the .NET team. So we're not talking a lot of times I think on this show, and the people we tend to know and talk about are on the ASP.NET team.
Right.
And Stephen Tobe has been part of building the core platform, and he's written some blog posts on performance and what they're doing there. And yes, certainly some of the old .NET myths no longer apply. For example, like the common yarn that I remember for years and years and years is like, oh, Link is slower than like a for each.
Right.
I think, as you well know, because we just had a talk with Scott Kay at Philly.net last month. He actually, as an example, did a Link versus for each versus for, just the
Oh, cool.
for without the iterator, and then one more version, not just using span, but using it in an incredibly technical way. And that thing blew the rest away. But he was conceding, like, you don't have to write this code.
Right.
The point of it was to point out that we are past the point of just remembering, like, oh, this is fast, this is slow. You need to test.
Yeah,
And we
exactly.
have great tools to test. Maybe we'll cover on this show. Benchmark.net is a great library to use for testing. Maybe we'll run through it on the show one of these days. And yeah, I really love that series with him. Like, they were implementing pieces of Link from scratch, implementing async await from scratch to a point,
Yeah.
just to kind of show you, like, here's what it's really happening.
Yeah, and I think that one, it was either the Link one or the async await one was actually 2 parts, because they went that there was that much detail in what they were going through.
Yeah,
So, definitely
I
check
do
those
like
out.
that series. But then, like you said, some of these other videos are great.
Yep. So
Um,
looking at, I'm about halfway through this one. That's the thing with a lot of these build videos. You kind of start to it like, oh, that's
yeah,
interesting. You gotta get back to it. Some of the great things that you can do or tooling that's now available to you as a developer that has GA'd and gotten released. Some things like DevBox and some of the tooling that came through in the latest version of Visual Studio, which we'll be looking at as part of what we're doing today because we're going to need that.
right.
Some things in C#13. There's a full-on video, not to preclude what we're doing here, but demystifying some of the stuff that's happening in Aspire now. That G8 at build, which is awesome. And then this one here, I watched this one. I really liked it because they're really getting
Oh,
into.
is your screen scrolling? I'm sorry,
Yeah,
because
you're
I'm
not
not
seeing it.
seeing it. Yeah, for me, it's still on the highly technical talk.
Hmm.
Let me see if
Am I in the?
maybe it froze for some reason.
Yeah, let me stop and reshare 1 second.
Yeah, we want to get started in just a moment. Just like the show title says, .NET Aspire. We don't want to spend too much time getting away from that. But these links, I'm actually dropping into the YouTube show notes as we speak. So
How's that? Is that better? So we'd gotten through the.
yeah, yep. That's
Okay.
scrolling now.
So there's the developer talk, C#13, .NET Aspire. These are all in this blog post. I do like this one a lot because they get into something that I'm kind of interested in some of the small language models and being able to have those run locally on your machine for applications. So I think that's something I personally am going to be diving into, and maybe we can bring that over to the show here to take a look at because there's the GPT models are awesome, but there's some great things you can do on the small language side of things with things like Phi and I'm blanking on the other one, but basically smaller models. And then there's a whole host of links here for people who want to look at additional content there. So this might be a good starting point if you've not seen a lot of the stuff from Build or Build's kind of new to you. This would be a great place to kind of kick things off and be able to find. And actually, they have a YouTube playlist, so it's even better. So
Yep. So one thing I'd like to do in the future is be able to put up a shorter link that people watching on Twitch or something can use. We'll have to figure out how to accomplish that. Maybe something we can implement. In fact, that's actually an interesting idea. That's a little project, I suppose.
our own playlist, as it were.
Well, I guess what I'm getting at is that in fact, I'll just go ahead and if I were to paste one of these links into chat,
Okay.
If you're watching on Twitch right now, you click on it. If you're watching on YouTube right now, you click on it. If we put it up on the screen, what are you going to do with that?
That's
But
not
what if, for example, people watching our show every day knew that they could go to the Dev Talk Show and perhaps some kind of link shortening, the
Mhm.
devtalkshow.com, and maybe the date.
Yeah.
We don't even have to tell them. It just becomes standard operating procedure, and that takes you like right to the YouTube video or maybe notes or something. Yes, something I've already been doing at Philly.net, right? But now
Right.
a little bit more industrialized for the show.
Yeah.
So
That's good.
yeah, that's something we could even work on. So in any case, thanks everybody for joining us, and we are going to talk about Aspire today and the Hello Dolly doll. I want to make sure I say it right because it's so easy to want to say Hello Dolly,
Right.
but is it
It's
pronounced Dolly or is it pronounced Dolly?
I believe it is more DALL-E, like the painter.
Dolly. Okay, that makes sense because it's image generation. So
Exactly, right?
Hello Dolly app that Rich uh, built on the show, partially built on the show. We've demoed on the show. I think
Yeah.
it's really cool. Um, and because it uses multiple services, we wanted to investigate what do we think about using it with .NET Aspire, which just has been released general availability at Build. There are talks that I want to share with you folks, all in the YouTube description.
Mhm.
So
Yeah. So let's try this and see what we can do. I've not done this yet. I have no idea if this is going to work, but I'm thinking about it from a developer, coming at it from the developer perspective of I've got this project. I see all these cool things that are happening in Aspire. I've got a project that talks to cloud services like Azure in this case, and it's .NET Core and it's running 8. Can I start to pull some of these things in? Let's see, right? So there's two things that we know that our application is using, and those are the things that we'll focus on. One of them is storage. So we have once that image gets created, I am writing out to an Azure Blob storage and being able to save the image and the metadata around, what questions were asked, what were the responses, what was the prompt that got generated, and being able to save all of that as metadata and image in the Blob store. So that in the application works. So um, what we want to try and do is see if we can include the Aspire components to abstract away or get it so that it can work uh, in that more disconnected manner from actually connecting up to the cloud. The other piece is um, we have OpenAI included in this. Now, the OpenAI runs through the semantic kernel framework, so that we have a way of kind of abstracting which uh, AI service that we're talking to. So we can talk to OpenAI, you can talk to Azure OpenAI, you can talk to different services by using that framework as a way of abstracting it out and switching to the one that you want. I'm not sure how well the Aspire component will work with that. So there's a couple of questions, a couple of things that we might want to look at. I think the best thing to do is maybe we start looking at the storage and go
yeah,
down that path and see if that makes sense, because that's probably
yeah,
the
definitely.
longest thing to connect up to. With
Yeah,
those.
definitely. And so I would say this show, we're not looking at it as being a .NET Aspire tutorial, but we're exploring it, trying to use it in quote unquote a real app, which I think I've often thought that's where the rubber meets the road is you can go and work in tutorial land and that gets you a good start. But then you want to use it for real and you're running into the real requirements for your project. It's even better if it's not a project you made up, because if you made it up, I've always found that like it's conveniently perfect for the thing that I'm trying. But at work, we have real requirements from real customers who want edge case type things. And you're like, huh, how am I going to take this tool that's mostly great for screwdriver or hammer, but I'm not quite hitting a nail here, but it's kind of like hitting a nail. So that's the stuff that I always find really fascinating about getting to work with a project. So
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And that's, I don't know, that's some of the stuff that as developers and doing what we do, it's kind of fun to play around with those things and see how they work.
yep, yep. I also have questions like you did. We're here to figure out the appropriateness of the solution because, as you pointed out, .NET Aspire, while there is a project template, both Damien and David in their talks, both talks that I've actually linked in the show notes. And if you refresh a little bit later, you should see them right now. Is they both talk about how they weren't trying to build something that required you to file a new project. They wanted you to be able to say, it's code based and simple enough that you feel confident bringing it into your existing app.
Yes.
But then here's my question. When it comes to, and this is what we're going to find out, when it comes to, I have a web app and I have an API that it calls, and I've been doing some kind of jury rigging for a long time, where maybe I bring up two Visual Studio Code instances, or maybe I bring up two Visual Studio IDEs, or two writers, or I use the multi-solution debugging in Visual Studio, something to make this work. I've been doing that, and I've always felt like, is this the best thing to do? That .NET Aspire says, like, no, let us handle that orchestration. Let us handle the startup, and let you sort of get out of this jury rig feel. That makes a ton of sense to me when it's web app calling API, maybe even calling a database, an on-prem database. So now my on-prem database is being fired up right here on my machine. It's just all here.
Mm-hmm.
But now with cloud services, I'm really going, well, no, wait a second. Do I need the cloud service for my day-to-day? And didn't I already solve that problem already?
Right.
So I'm really interested in seeing how this helps us in those scenarios. And like you said, does it link up with semantic kernel well enough, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know that we'll get to both of those.
Right.
So
Yeah, we may not get that
it's
answer
something,
today. So
yeah. But definitely something that we've got a couple of things that we can look at here. And we dove into .NET Aspire on a previous show, probably about 2 weeks ago at this point, almost. And what that did was we kind of laid the foundation, right? We focused on .NET Aspire, getting that into a project and being able to use the service connection capabilities of it. Here we're focusing more on one of the other legs of .NET Aspire, which is the component piece. So being able to understand through NuGet packages, connecting to various other services that we want to include in our application. So our application here is not .NET Aspire ready, right? It's one project. And that's the other thing that kind of makes this one a little bit different. You think of a lot of the examples, there are multiple projects in there. And it was all around the story of, hey, how do we start those things up? How do we get everything configured? How do we get it running the right way? And this project isn't that complex. So that may be another thing to consider as we go through and start to do this, right? Maybe there's a certain complexity you hit, and that's when Aspire makes sense. Or maybe if you're just connecting to Azure, that bringing that Aspire piece in is enough to do that. I think that's some of the things we want to kind of tease out through here as we do this. So, and I saw you flashed up there. Good morning, Zig. Welcome. Thank you for joining us.
yep.
Always happy to have folks let us know that they're watching out there in the chat land. All right. So I think when we did this last time, and to be fair, this is using the latest version of Visual Studio. So it's 17.10.1. And if you do that, that's what's got the Aspire GA bits in it. So we no longer have to use preview, which is what we did in the previous show. We're actually using the full version or the GA version of Visual Studio. And again, it's 17.10.1. Let me see if we can bring this one.
Yeah, look at that. You're already on a 17.10.1. I just double checked while you were talking there, because I am updated to 17.10, which came out during build, but I have not run the updater in a while being since the show on Tuesday.
Yep.
Or gosh, I don't even know what day it was anymore. Maybe it was Wednesday.
And there was a brief thought that, hey, we should focus. Hey, you got the little bubble down here that says, hey, you've got a new update, and we should do it on the stream. And no, that takes too long.
Yeah, I know. I always say, like, no, let's not do it now.
And too long is not. I mean, to be honest, it was probably 5-ish minutes, but that's a long time when you're trying to fill air while you're streaming. So
Yeah.
So let's do this. So I think when we did it last time, we ended up going into add. And then there is .NET Aspire Orchestrator support. That's what we did last time. Now we can go that route, but I also saw over the course of trying to follow along and do some demos where they went this way. Add a new
Yeah.
project.
And I think this was, again, when you watch the videos that you're going to see both in the playlist you showed and that are now copied into the show notes on YouTube, David Fowler and Damian Edwards intentionally wanted to convince people. They wanted people to believe that you don't have to have the tooling. You don't have to have this IDE. And even if you do, you should feel comfortable knowing that .NET Aspire is built from the ground up. So that means it's not like some of the old days. I know, thinking back many years to all the times that you just felt like, I can't, there's too much magic in starting an application that I'm going to have to file a new project and copy code over, you know?
Yeah. Uh,
So
Which, I mean, honestly, when I went from Blazor 6 to Blazor 8, I did a lot of that, right? I
yeah.
almost redid this application. That's why it actually is, the project is called HelloDallE 8, right? Because it was a little different. This, and taking a step back, when we did the show a couple weeks ago, when we did that ad from the solution, add our .NET Aspire orchestration, it added two projects. It added an app host and it added a service defaults, right? So a way of wiring up all of the various projects so we knew um, where our APIs lived and how to talk to those. As I kind of mentioned, this is one project. We don't have services to discover inside of our application. So we can certainly do that, but the service default won't really help us much. What we do have, though, is we could put an app host here, and then that would at least give us this one application where those components that we're interested in to include in our project can be included here as well. So I hope that makes sense. That was kind of my thinking about how we proceed here.
No,
So
I
with
think you're
that,
right. I suppose it's interesting to figure out is part of the intent part of the intent of Aspire to say that, you've broken some of this into microservices, or do we even get some benefit? Do we get some benefit in the fact that now, as you're not going directly to the actual connection string or settings or configuration per environment, you get that pretty nice, little moniker that you use, and then it gets replaced later, I
yeah.
suppose, which that's what we're gonna find out. I'm really interested in this.
Yeah, same. So let's just give it a shot. So we're gonna include an app host, and maybe in the future we look at this and also say, well, what if we just put the NuGet packages for Aspire inside of our project that exists, right? Maybe we don't even need to create a separate project. Don't know, right? So I'm going to be honest. I'm kind of following a little bit of tutorial and a little bit of experimentation, much like you were doing, which was quite awesome this week on the authentication piece you did for Blazor, which I thought was really impressive where you were going with that.
Yeah, a lot of that worked out pretty well. We didn't get as far as I'd like, but that's okay. I think we certainly exposed some of the differences because we've been focusing so much on Blazor's server side, and now here it's like, oh wow, client really makes a difference.
Yeah, a little bit. um, so I'm just going to rename this a little bit, Hello Dolly app host, and we'll say next. And yep, we're going to configure for HTTPS and include the long-term support. So not many choices here. It's just kind of a simple way of getting our project included. All right. So I think this is kind of the place where we would typically start, right? We've got our program file inside of the app host environment here. And this might be where, so this one probably does not, well, we should check. This one probably does not have a reference to, um,
Yeah, I think you add those references yourself in this case.
yes. And of
And
course, I'm forgetting.
I want to say that there is a .NET Aspire, uh, like an ad reference that sort of helps you, right? Is it in the ad flyout, or no, it wasn't there? Yeah,
So it's not an Aspire package.
it might just be a project reference.
Yeah. And that would be here, right? We would do the project dependencies, right? So you would say that hello That app host is essentially dependent on HelloDallE 8 as the application, which would
We'll
map
find
to
out.
what we saw in the demo that we did, where the front end piece, the app host was reliant on the front end piece.
Right.
It was also reliant on the service defaults too. I'm gonna. I saw something in it. Let me see if this works. So we'll cancel that for a second. I think what you can do is take this and drag this.
Oh, that's
Yes.
right. He talked about what did he did do something on stage, and I remember thinking like, "What?"
You're right.
And I
Exactly.
think
So I
I
think
think a lot of people thought that as he was saying it. So now if you look at references, uh
right. So now it's we've defined just by basically taking the project title here and dragging it onto the
yeah,
project where we want to build that dependency. So the
yeah,
order's important, right? It's whatever is the sub project or the dependency, whatever that project depends on gets dragged into the project. I think it's probably
right.
the best
The
way to
app
say.
host depends on the projects, and then you probably have it sitting in that dependencies tree in the Solution Explorer now under app host. Um, so the dependencies piece there.
Oh, yes. There
Yeah,
you go.
okay, so the project reference was added. Perfect. Okay,
Which
now
which is
here's what
another
I'm interested in because you're right. Doing this now in person is a little different. When I'm watching them up there jazzing through it, you go, "Oh wow, this looks easy." But now it's like, "Hold on, what did they do again?" Because
exactly.
you were looking for those projects constants to be there for you. That's what you were
Yeah,
looking for in Program CS, right? Okay.
exactly. Exactly. Um, okay. I think we're going slow, and we're going slow on purpose because we're kind of finding our way here. So, but I think that's it. We're in a good starting spot. So if we go back to our program CS, which
Right.
is
And to
um,
be clear, this is programs just for people who are watching us zoom through it. This is Program CS for the Hello Dolly app host, which is the .NET Aspire. I don't know if I want to call it the project. It's the app host for your distributed application.
yes, I think
Yeah.
that's fair. Um, okay. So one of the things that we want to make sure we include is we need to include essentially a package here. So let's go to our package manager, because what we want to include is the component for blob storage inside of our project. And if we do um, make a package manager console, and there's all kinds of different ways of doing it. What's not clear, um,
So in NuGet, there are a whole lot of Aspire packages. Like I think you can even search Aspire dot, and you will find all these packages for these different components that you might want to connect to. I remember in the documentation for components, if you're looking for the one for storage, is it Azure Blob Storage?
yes.
And so if you're looking for it, it's aspire.azure.storage.blobs.
Let's see what we got when we do this. So to your point,
Oh yeah, look at that.
we got storage blobs, we've got key vaults, we've got messaging, storage queues, because any Azure storage accounts are essentially or four different pieces: files, queues,
Yeah.
blobs, and tables. So you
And
can
when
do
you hit dot there in Package Manager Console, that's when it sort of dove out and said, "Here are some options."
dot tab.
Dot tab. Okay, good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because if I'm just typing along, I can do the dot and do the
Okay.
storage, and then tab, and we get the
Okay.
IntelliSense to
So
help
there's
us.
like a completion, and it doesn't have to be at the dot. It's just anywhere in this process. Okay, fine,
Yep.
cool.
So that would be that. And I guess the question is, it probably needs to be in our app host project and not in our Dolly project, would be my thought at this point. It's not clear when I look through really quickly at the documentation over my shoulder here. Um, and it kind of makes sense because we're going to modify this program.cs to be able to add storage, blob storage, to our builder here. So that's kind of how I'm thinking about it. So let's do this. Let's bring this in. And I mentioned that as a discussion point. So if you feel I'm going off the
Well, so it looks like maybe this is interesting. It looks like maybe you add Aspire Azure Storage blobs to the project using the blobs, and you add aspire.hosting.azure.storage to the app host.
oh, so you're thinking it's the other way.
Yeah, isn't that's interesting here? And I'm actually getting that from documentation on the Azure Blob Storage component in .NET Aspire.
So let's take a look. It's not here.
Yeah, so in components under Azure, there is an Azure, yes, and that's where I scroll down a little bit, and it shows example usage, and then after that, app host usage.
Gotcha. Because I think what you were down that further. Okay. So, but this one here is this, right? The component
The component
consuming
consuming project. They're trying to figure out how to
project.
tell
What
us.
is that?
Yeah, what is a component consuming project? And I guess what I'm at first I wasn't sure what it was either, but I became a little more sure when I said, well, look, now they have an app host usage. Are they trying to say that with one you put one into your the actual project, the app,
Hmm.
and then the other goes into the app host?
Okay. So
I
no
think. I mean, we're
worries.
gonna find out.
I
For
think
one
you're
thing, yeah. The reason why I think that we're kind of in the right direction is that you don't want the Azure Blob client in the app host. You're not interested in that. You want to use that client in your app
I want to use it in the app, but it looks like we're putting it in both places, right? Because we've got this one here where it's saying, hey, add blob
to the app.
storage.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then down here in the app host usage, we're doing this add again.
Yep.
So,
But it's a different ad though. It's
oh, that's the hosting
aspire.hosting.
one.
Yeah.
Catch. Okay. Okay.
Which the nice thing is you can just run to all you got to do is go to the project file. You don't even necessarily have to work so hard with the NuGet package, right? Just change the project file, and I think it takes care of it.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Okay. Um, so I don't even have to do the, I was going to uninstall it and
Yeah,
reinstall it.
I don't think you have to, and that's the nice thing about .NET. The .NET platform these days is certainly .NET Framework. It was all about like, okay, I got to go uninstall, but
I know it's in here. There you go. Edit
yeah,
project
it's right
file.
there.
There we go.
So I think that you're able to just change that to hosting.azure.storage and no blobs, according to this. And I'm
Oh, and it's down the
sure.
bottom. It said restoring NuGet packages. So there
Yeah,
was that.
that's really
Okay.
cool.
Yeah.
And then you need one of those references in your well, you need the other reference in your main project. But if you just want to get it registered in the app host too, we'll see.
Yes. Yeah. I know what you mean. So we need this Azure Storage blobs, which is fine, but we also want to include, let's grab this.
Yep. And this is, oh, I love how it's trying to guess what you're going to use next. This is aspire.azure.storage.blobs.
Right. So we're back to what we originally put in the hosting one.
Yep.
Plural blobs?
Yes, it is plural.
Okay. Cool. All right. Let's see what that does. So that gives us the ability now to do
Well, I imagine the first thing you want to do is see. I'm curious now to see. You were going to add a project, so now we're talking about adding the HelloDallE project.
into the app host.
Yeah, so that the
Okay.
distributed application runs it. So I think you can start off with just builder dot, because what I'm interested in is that HelloDallE project, is it ready to go? So I guess it's builder.add project. it's thinking about it. And then now it does the projects. Uh, what does it think that is? It's not projects dot hello DALL-E 8. I believe you that it might not be.
Well, I think it depends on the. I think it depends on the
Oh,
namespace
look
you're in.
at no that it. So using projects up at the top brought that in for you.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
So
wow.
that is, uh, and if you F12 or dive into Hello Dolly E8, what we see that's kind of interesting is this was generated for you when you added this project as a dependency, and that felt a little touch magical of like,
A little bit.
huh, I don't remember asking it to create this, you know, I don't even know what to call this. It's like it's a class, but
Yeah.
it's sort of like a generated class that its only purpose is to tell this machine, hey, here's where to go find that project. And because it's generated, if I pull the code down and I don't happen to put my code where you put your code, it gets generated again. So
Oh,
you don't have to worry because it's auto generated. This isn't
nice.
getting committed to source control. So you don't
That's
have to
true.
worry about like, oh wait, I don't use C repos, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, you use, d/Chris/whatever,
Yeah,
right?
whatever. Yeah.
Nice.
Okay.
Okay.
So that's
That's
cool.
fun.
That all worked.
Yeah. All right, let's close that. Um, so we still have, and this is, so it should be just this, and
Right.
then dot with
Now,
reference, which is how we did the last one. And in this
right.
case, our reference is, well,
Now we haven't
we
there's
haven't
two
done it
ways to do
yet.
this. One is we haven't created a reference. So, I mean, that's fine. That little squiggly will go away in a little bit, but now I guess you can create that reference, right?
Yep. It's not project, it's add. Let's do it the right way. Dot.
Yep.
Let's see if this trick still works. Add Azure storage. There we go. Love that. And we're just going to keep it as storage. And we're going to call it storage. Oops. Tab did the wrong thing for me. There we go. Dot add blob. And in this case, we'll call it blobs.
All right, cool. Um,
Why is it not happy? Let's see this again. Come on. There we go. This isn't the
oh, okay,
post.
so I know why
Go ahead.
actually. Because well, I thought I knew why. So, let's see. We haven't given this project a name. We haven't given the Hello Dolly project a name. So do
Gotcha.
you have to call that like web in parentheses maybe? That's interesting because that could mean that some of the documentation we're looking at is a little buggy. Um, because if you have to put something in there,
I mean,
then you know,
yeah, it kind of makes sense from the app host side of it, right? Having some kind of a reference
yep,
to call this, this project that, the web project versus some of the other projects that when you think about distributed application that Aspire usually goes on top of, you probably want to have some reference to it.
yep. So, but the thing about it is that if you're looking at the same piece of documentation I am under app host usage,
Yeah.
they do not show. So if that's correct, then I feel like that sample has a bug because if there is really if there is no method that could possibly work here because no overload takes 0 arguments, then this seems like a great candidate to submit a documentation update.
Yep.
So I'm certainly going to look at this, probably a little offline later tonight or something.
Yep. And there's this section up here where if someone wants to go down that path and start to edit it and go against, because all of this documentation is in GitHub and it is community driven, as we say. Cool. That's a good catch. All right. So let's see. The add blobs method will read connection information from the app host configuration, for example, from user secrets, under the connection strings blobs configuration key. So we don't have anything. We don't have that set up right now because our configuration for blob connectivity is over in the HelloDallE project, which is fine. We can move it. Just thinking through the thought process on that.
Wait, say that one more time. For some reason that didn't connect as I was looking at the doc. I admit I went back and looked at the doc again, but you were saying.
So there's this add
it reads it
blobs,
from the app host configure. Okay, I got it.
right? So we've got to move it.
Yeah.
And with method, or the with reference method, passes that connection information that we've wired up here
Okay, fair enough.
into the builder.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
So we've got to do
because the app host is going to be running all these things, and so it needs the connection information. And they're even suggesting gently here, maybe you could read it from user secrets, which if you have to set that up, we can certainly move away from the screen for a moment. Let me know.
Yeah. But
Okay.
in general, well, hang on. Just to
Yeah.
show what it is that we're doing, there is manage user secrets, right? And I think we've talked about this before.
Yeah.
But
Right.
when we do that for this project, we're going to get a file, secrets.json, stored in a location outside of the folder structure of my project. So not in that repos /HelloDallE/source, but in another location. I think it's in your app data.
It happens to
You
be in
can
your
find
app
it.
data on
Yes.
Windows.
Yep. So what we need to do here is something like connection string, and then that, and then it is colon.
Did they say it was blob or something, or is that what you have it as?
That's what they want it as. So we would say here blob, and then it would be whatever the connection string is for that. So we'd have to put that in. So that's the structure we're giving, and all that comes from essentially the documentation here, right? So it's actually connection strings and then blobs.
Blobs, okay. All right, and so you have to fill this out. This secrets.json is not going to be found in source control. If you go and look at the HelloDallE project in Rich's repository, you're not going to see this, which is a question that we had when we were doing the external authentication. Somebody, was probably brought the repo down and then F5'd it to run it and said, like, why doesn't it work? It's like, well, you gotta configure it, and we're not going to commit that configuration because that configuration is, quite frankly, it's our Google API dashboard, and it's our Entra ID, and
Yep. So that you should be able to see in the section here where it's got the URL or the local path to it.
Yes. Yep.
And it's got 402.461 FB.
Yep.
If we go into our app source project,
yep.
Wow, there you go. There's the ID.
Yep.
Which is different than the one that we have for our HelloDallE one. So we've got two separate secrets files. So you can do a secret file for each project, essentially, is what it comes down to.
Yeah, when I've played with that stuff, it's per project. When you say that you want to add user secrets in the IDE, that gets thrown into your project. If you do it from the command line, add user secrets, that gets thrown into your project. And then that GUID, that is getting committed to source control. So that's fine. The next developer pulls it out. All the different IDEs and editors and command lines are smart enough to say, like, oh, well, somebody's already picked a GUID for this project, so I will now create a secrets file using that GUID. And when I say using that GUID in Windows, you can see that it's a folder in app settings. On Linux, it's in your profile.
Okay.
I have explored what it does on Linux, and the IDEs and everything just know what to do. Visual Studio Code knows what to do. The .NET command line just knows what to do. Writer just knows what to do. Everything just knows what to do. So it's great. And as you're getting this set up, if you're going to go get this set up,
Yeah. Let's there you go.
then
Thank you.
what I was going to do while you were doing that was show a couple things on my screen while
Yeah, go for it.
you're working there. And also maybe present a radical idea that I've been thinking about lately.
Okay.
So here we go. I'm going to share while Rich is getting. So what Rich is doing right now is he's putting the connection string for Azure Blobs, his own connection string, into the secrets JSON for Aspire. Why are we doing that off screen? Because that's his Azure storage. And so, we want to make sure, use your Azure storage. You can definitely, we already know that there's plenty of ways for developers to get some trial credits, or even, I think you can even use Azure storage incredibly cheaply. So this is from a video that is in our description. It's the Code to Cloud with .NET Aspire. It is David Fowler and Damian Edwards once again. And they presented this at NDC Sydney, and this video went up. And the reason I like this slide is I feel like it was a concise way of David saying, here's what we're trying to do with .NET Aspire. We're trying to give you orchestration, which is what we're setting up now, a distributed app that knows how to fire up your other apps. We want to give you components, which is what Rich is configuring now. Component libraries and components that already know how to glue services into the .NET Aspire distributed application. So we're gluing in Azure Storage blobs. Service discovery is what Rich is setting up so that now, instead of doing what I've had to personally do many times, is pull this project out of source control and then immediately go change a bunch of connection strings, because I know, the ones in source control, they're either not right, or they're placeholders, or they point to a dev machine, like a centralized dev environment. You're getting out of that business with friendlier names. And then there's also a project template, which we used. We used the project template to add to the solution.
Right.
But the project templates are an optional piece. And finally, the thing that a lot of people really love is the dashboard that you get when you fire up a .NET Aspire app, which even offers you correlation as calls are being made for a specific request. It came to the web server, it went to the app, it went to blob storage. So I just happened to love that slide. I thought it was really spot on as to what this is really about.
Yeah, absolutely. And that covers the breadth of what Aspire is hopefully helping developers make those chores and tasks a little easier. So cool. So we're out of that view. Let me go ahead and add me back to the stage again. There we go.
Okay, cool.
And what I've done is, so we went a little bit in reverse here. So we did the app host usage because we started going down that path. So we've wired up a lot of things in the app host. I do want to go back and get some of the things that are in the actual project, the HelloDallE 8 project, and get those things wired up. So we've got to put a builder reference or a Azure Blob Client reference. And what that does is that's going to give us essentially our dependency injection for those components. So let's see here.
So first off, what do you have right now? You have a storage blob client that you're using right now, right?
This one here. Yeah.
And so there's a controller or something, I'm just guessing how your app works. That's getting, or a Blazor page, right? There's a Blazor component that's getting this injected.
Yep. So
Okay,
we
so we're
have
switching over from, gosh, I don't know how to put this, like the direct injection of this. We're switching to now, okay, we're gonna inject the client.
Yeah, which is interesting, right? Because we're, things that we've set up in here, like to get the blob settings and to have a reference to Azure storage blobs. Are we really going to need all of that, or is everything just kind of wrapped up in
Yeah.
the fact that
Oh, we're
the
gonna find out.
Aspire
Yeah, we'll
client
find
knows
out.
about it?
Yeah,
Yep.
we're gonna find out. So that's interesting.
Uh,
You were using secrets.json while you're getting this set up, and it I had this radical thought the other day
okay.
of, how I often say, like friends don't let friends use the portal, which is a joke to
Right.
say that learn in the Azure portal, but try to get to an automated state as fast as possible. Like even the same moment that you figured it out in the portal, just do whatever it takes to get to an automated, I don't know if it's bicep, I don't know if it's a bash script, like just get out of the portal as fast as you can.
Yeah.
Um, I was thinking about real production issues that I'm seeing happen, at Microsoft customers or even where I work, and or we've worked before with the
Mhm.
.NET platform. And because it's in the file new project template, everybody reaches for the app settings JSON.
Ah,
And then the
okay.
first thing that happens is you now as an enterprise have to figure out how you're going to promote these app settings files. But
Yeah.
I'm not, Rich, I'm curious what you think. If you have this discussion with customers, maybe you don't, maybe they're past this. Would you tell a customer like, yeah, app settings files in prod, not necessarily my favorite way to go? Because that's how I feel.
Yeah. No, I feel that way as well because they're in my so a couple things, right? Everybody's concerned from a security perspective about checking in secrets. And when you have your app settings, unless you manually go through and modify the git ignore file, it's going to get checked into code, right? It's going to get
Right.
checked into your repository.
Right.
So now you've got your secrets living up there. So from that perspective alone, I preach about the user secrets, and that's how you should be doing it, or
Yep.
go right to Key Vault and do it there. I
Yep.
think the other thing is that I've not even if I had app settings wired up, um, I've had when I moved to Azure, I don't always get those coming across as the settings that wind up in my app settings in my app service. So I end up having to script putting those into there anyway. But that's
Yep.
maybe I'm missing something. I'm not doing it right, but
No,
that's
I think you're right. What I've seen that different teams end up having to do is they'll use the app settings pattern, app settings.development, because you can now start creating more files, app settings dot, I don't know, call it staging, or app settings.qa. And then as long as you set up that ASP.NET Core environment variable, it's auto magically picking the right app settings file. But here's the problem. You've just defeated the purpose of user secrets, because now what are you going to put in those files? And are
yeah,
you going to put those files in source control? Or are you saying, no, those are being managed by our ops team? Where are they putting them? And I think the .NET team's recommended approach has always been, when I say always, it's in the documentation, has been they like to think environment first. So instead of app settings files, they seem to prefer put it in the environment. These are environment variables, whether you're in
mhm,
Linux, whether you're Mac, whether you're Windows, they all have environment variables.
yep,
If you don't like that strategy, you just pointed out configuration management, Azure Key Vault,
yeah,
uh, some other configuration management. I don't care at this point. Just what I kind of am getting to is that, man, I wonder if I never want to open app settings JSON and just get used to the secrets.json on the local box and get that configuration management system thought of super early in
mhm,
your project lifecycle, so that you are out of this business.
yeah,
You're as quickly as you can. It's kind of like my friends don't let friends use the portal. I'm beginning to think, here's another thing I want to get out of my app as fast as possible. I don't want it here.
yeah,
Not what
totally.
we were going to talk about today, but I've been
No,
thinking about it a lot lately.
I think you're thinking about it the right way. You don't want to if you start going, we're kind of used to going into the app settings path because that was, if you've been doing this long enough, that's
Yeah.
where these values were, right? It was web.config and then it
Web
became
config.
web
Yep.
settings and even the web config had that same nomenclature, right? It was
Mhm.
web.development.config, right? So you had different settings for those as well, if I remember right. Um, yeah, I'll be honest, I think that might be the first time I've opened the app settings file on this because I just don't use them anymore. I think the only thing I played around with at one point was, well, maybe this could be the structure of what your user secrets file is without the values in it, so that you at least know, well, this is the JSON structure that is my um, environment variables or the variables that I need for my application to run. But so it's there somewhere and it gets checked in for people to look at.
Yeah.
But I mean, that could also be just in a wiki or some other side
Sure.
documentation for the project for getting started.
That is an interesting idea though, because the configuration files I think honor comments. So
Yes.
I could see putting a comment at the top that says, do not, best practice, don't put don't put values here.
Yeah.
This is merely to display the structure that needs to go into environment. Recommend you use user secrets. And then of course it can go on a wiki, it can go in a README. But I'm always trying to think about like what does the developer do? They git clone, open the project, hit F5. And then when the app settings aren't there, but they open this app settings file, are they just going to start typing them in? So how do I
Exactly.
stop that? How do I say, hold on, let's not go there? And maybe that's a way to do it. But not, maybe we'll explore that in a future project because I think developing best practices for work is part of what I like to do. These are the kind of things that don't end up in documentation. Is
Mhm.
how do you communicate effectively with your teammates, including the teammates that don't work on your team yet?
Right. Yeah, the future people.
Yeah, they're not even employed at your company yet, but someday they're going to come in, they're going to clone the repo, and they're going to want to get to work.
Yeah. And I I think that's always something we need to be considering as a developer, right? What's the what's the experience for the person just joining my project? Maybe they're joining because they're part of the team. Maybe they're joining because, hey, I can help you fix this bug because I did it in my project, right? However, it is to get them up and running quickly. We talk about DevBox, code spaces, dev containers as ways of doing that, but there's some project things that need to be in place as well as part of that process.
Yeah, yeah. So let's see if we can get if we
Yeah,
could get
in
the
the last
distributed
10.
app going in the last few minutes here. That would be great. It'll at
So
least show that we were able to add to an existing application. That could be pretty cool. So
yeah, so we're going to go back to our program file for the HelloDallE, which is this one, and probably let's go here and do it. Um, there we go. Thank you. Copilot builder
it's
dots.
trying.
Yeah, add Azure Blob client, right? Because that's what we want to do. And in this one, we want to call it blobs. Keep the naming consistent. So that should also give us the dependency injection we're looking for. So now if we think about going back to, let's save that and go back to image generation component, because I believe that's the only place we're doing the writing of the blob,
Yep.
we should be able to now inject. That's interesting.
I
So
think you can inject it, right? Because
we should be able to inject that, right? That
yeah, I
blob
think
service
so.
client. So let's see what this does.
Interesting that we're doing a Blazor example versus that example, which could have been just any service, really. That's a very generic looking example.
Yeah. So we get interesting. So we get that, right? Coming back because our blob service client is interesting.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Okay. And
So if I
that's
didn't do this, all right, let's see.
you didn't even have to add a using, right? Like that
Like,
makes sense to me that stops working.
okay, so even though over here, this is just a generic thing, it's not fully wired up, I guess. So what we're
Right.
saying is I still need the Azure blob um,
Yeah.
reference.
It's
Okay.
it's just that I think what's happening is that you have now, by doing add Azure Blobs client or whatever that extension method was, if we were to dive into that code, it must be doing the Aspire glue, creating the client and saying, okay, now that's injectable throughout the application.
So you mean by F12ing into here?
Yeah, there must be some glue in here, which
Yeah.
I don't know that we would figure out very quickly, but maybe. In fact, it kind of looks like there it is. So new blob storage component, add client. Does that make sense to you? Where it's
Just here.
yeah, it's taking an Azure storage blob settings.
Hmm.
It's taking a client builder. Maybe it's just doing all the stuff you did.
I think so. I think it's all doing it from what's over in the app host project, if I'm not
Okay, cool.
mistaken. Yeah.
Well,
Cool.
I'm curious if it works.
All right, so let's go to so so we're wired up here. We've got this. Let's save it. What we want to do though is wherever we have our blob service.
So here's where you created the blob service client. We're not going to use that anymore.
Yep. So let's comment that out. Control K, Control C, and
And that's
do
it.
Oh, wow, because it's the same
because
name.
that's what you injected it as.
Uh,
Yes. That might be it. That might be it because previously it wasn't blowing up because the what you did on line 89 overrode the injected component. Yeah,
yeah,
the injected client. But now it's like, oh, well, I'll just use the base classes, not the base classes, this class because the component is in the end of class.
yep.
I wonder if is that it? Like, is that all there is to it?
That's easy. Uh, for the Monty Python fans out there. Let's see. Let's try it. So we'll save this. What I wanna do is take this and make it
Yeah, now we
the
want to run.
startup
So we're
project.
switching. Yeah, now we're switching to run the distributed application, the host.
Yep. And what's cool is we'll now get all of the other things that we like about Aspire, like the telemetry and the dashboard and those kind of things kind of wired up for us too. So let's try
Knock
this.
on no, knock on
Yeah.
wood real quick because because especially with time winding down, this would be great to show we added it to an existing application and we're getting the telemetry, we're getting the orchestration maybe is not yet you know the most useful piece, but
Right.
the service discovery, the telemetry, the dashboard, I would love to see that all just pop up here. Oh, bummer. Oh, okay. I think you must have had. Oh no, really?
It's failed to load my secrets. And those are the secrets that are associated with the app host.
Yeah.
And it's got 2 inner exceptions. Couldn't parse the JSON file.
Oh,
Oh, well, that's interesting.
well, let me
Yeah, let's bounce out of here.
take a look there real quick because maybe there's a missing comma or oh, it happens to me all the time.
Manage user
Just
secrets.
don't get something right in
Oh,
that secrets JSON.
I see what it did. So when I pasted it in, it did not. It did it. Control that. Okay. It actually did it outside of. I guess that was where my cursor was. I just basically dropped it in. I thought it was inside, but it gave me another double set of quotes and some weird line feed inside of there. So I'll save this. Let's close it back up. Let's do a quick run.
And then are we ready to show your screen?
Yeah, I would say let's go.
Okay. Of course, for now, I'm struggling to find it. Okay, so you did run. You ran. Oh, look at this. Look at it all. Just look at that. Now, granted, it didn't all work. However, the Aspire glue is working.
Yeah.
The dashboard came up. It seems to have tried to start the web project. Okay, it wasn't able. It wasn't able to use the configuration that you set there.
Yeah. Blob is missing configuration subscription configuration. Wow. Okay.
What I'm encouraged by, though, is that we took an existing application that we know uses another service,
Yep.
configured it. It wasn't really a whole lot of code. It all kind of makes sense. And yeah, now there's some end stage here. We got a pretty good question here. MJ asks, afternoon. Not sure what this app uses Blob for, but would the idea be to use a container storage locally in dev and in production use cloud Azure Blob storage using publish apps? I certainly think that that's an excellent way to do this. And I
Yeah.
think what we will be teasing out is a best practice for how to set up this application. We intentionally started today with we have an existing app. Yes, the app, it's got all the configuration like a lot of small applications do. It just owns it all. It owns it all in there. how do you start breaking that apart? Even though it may be overkill for the small application, if we're here to demonstrate how you might use it in a large enterprise application, how do we start breaking things apart? Maybe eventually and I'm not speaking for you, Rich, but maybe what you might do is say, well, what if I take all of the Azure Blob work and move it into an API?
Yeah.
Not because you want to do it because HelloDallE needs it, just to, hey, I've now practiced doing this and I'm ready to share it with customers. I'm ready to share it with people I'm teaching. So I think you make a good point that the service discovery that we're experimenting with right now feels very like straight to production. I think
Mhm.
that's true. I think you're right. But for the moment, it was, hey, can I get this working? Do you think that not having Docker up is what's keeping the project from starting? Or
Um, I'm not positive. I think
okay,
Jay makes a good point that think about think about the other example where the components would typically run something out of a container, and maybe that's what was the issue here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop this and have it restart and just see if that helps the situation any. I would have expected a a different error,
error
right? One
message.
that says, "Hey,
Yeah,
we're looking for," yeah, and that didn't help either. Um, but that's fine. I may be missing some of the pieces that's looking for in that blob connection string. Um, okay, I think that's a good
so
place to
MJ, thank you
unpack
very
that.
much for the question.
Yeah, absolutely.
And certainly we do want to make it clear that like what's built today isn't production ready, right? We are exploring what we think you're going to do, which doesn't always come up on stage very well at a build or at an NDC conference. Of here's a real app, like this is it, and how do you add this to what you're doing today? I
Yeah.
certainly have some apps that I today right now can tell you, I know that this app depends on this API. So I am already doing that jury rigging pattern of like, well, let me get the API fired up and now let me get the app fired up. Can I start to bring in Aspire to say, I'm starting to make sense of this so that this doesn't, it doesn't suck so much anymore.
Right.
But
And part of it is playing, not playing, but testing the edge, right? Is this, we can certainly wire it up this way. Does it make sense for us to wire it up this way, given the size of the project and how easy it is to kind of get it started if you've got all of your connection strings in there? That was part of the experiment as well. And I think what we want to do is maybe, plan something for next week where we can come back and finish this up, and then also maybe take a look at the OpenAI side of it too, because I think that is equally important to be able to see how that component works, because it's a core part of what we do here in this app.
yeah, definitely. And then I think I've also got some apps myself that I think I'd like to try and, um, I don't want to steal. I'm not going to say it because Jeff Fritz has has aspirify.com.
Yep.
I don't, it's not really trademarked or anything. At least I don't think so. I shouldn't consult my attorney. I don't know if it's, if it is, but that's his word. I love it.
Yep.
But yeah, I have a feeling we won't be the only people saying we're going to try to aspirify our app. I have a feeling that's going to become a verb.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I think it's something we should all get out and try and at least see what your experience is. We'd love to hear your experience. Drop a note in the comment if you're seeing
Yep.
this video in the future. And yeah, let us know how it worked for you and what services you were able to, or components you were able to get into your application. Because we're at that stage now. It's GA. Let's get out there and start seeing how this thing
Yep.
works for our apps.
I think it's going to be an exciting summer. We've got more Blazor and authentication we want to look at. We've got .NET Aspire to look at. The .NET 9 previews are coming.
Mhm.
So there's going to
Yeah.
be a show real soon where Rich and I will probably just say like, okay, let's try using it. Let's see what happens. C# 13 stuff that's super exciting. Let us know what you want to see. We've already got a ton of ideas from the comments. We just got to get the shows together, but people have asked a ton of great questions. So please keep it up. And thank you everybody who is subscribing, liking, commenting, whether it's YouTube, whether it's Twitch, joining us on YouTube, joining us on Twitch, joining us on Twitter. Thank you all very much. But we've got to run to morning stand up, right?
Yep.
And so
Absolutely.
here on the US East Coast, it's about that time to grab that cup of coffee just before you meet with your team. And wherever you are in the world, thank you very much for being with us. And we'll see you all next time on the Dev Talk Show. Which I don't know that I'm going to be very quick at getting out of here, but I'm going to try.